Hello and welcome to Your Coaching Journey, a podcast for doctors about coaching. Whether you're a coaching doctor, a doctor who is learning to coach, or a doctor who'd like to build coaching into your professional life, then this is the podcast for you.
Hi, I'm Helen Leathers, and with me today is my co-host and business partner, Tom Dillon.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Excited to be doing another podcast. I'm sure I say that every time, but I am excited to be doing another podcast.
And today, you should be excited because we're going to share a brand new tool, fresh out of the coaching toolkit, which you've actually created yourself.
Hurrah! I'm doubly excited today because it's my own work. So yes, I have created a new coaching model.
So tell us how you came to develop this model.
Well, as you know, I have been coaching training for a number of years, probably 10 years now that I've been doing some form of coaching training. And we've been running a transformational coaching diploma for the last 3 years since lockdown. So that's very much I've been involved in teaching people some coaching skills. And in the past, we've used the GROW model, which is a perfectly fine model. It's been around a long time. It was created by John Whitmore, who wrote a book called Coaching for Performance. And I think most organizations would embrace the GROW model because it's very dynamic in terms of, well, what's your goal and what's happening at the moment and what are your options and how are you going to get there? What are you going to do? So it's very action focused. So it moves people forward. And obviously, if you're managing someone or involved in organizational structures, that's great. You want something to happen. And I've looked at other models. There are other models available, Clear, Oscar, things like that are more or less the same. So I've never felt inclined to stray away from the GROW model. But having been training people for some time and doing lots of training now with doctors around coaching, it's become apparent that it's not really fit for purpose. Which is, it's a bit difficult to say, having trained everyone. Here's a GROW model. This is what you need to use. But I think I've just come to that realization in watching people get to grips with coaching, how it doesn't flow in the way that a coaching conversation might. So I set about trying to create a model that flowed more easily than the GROW model. So if you think about the GROW model, it stands for goal, reality, options, and way forward. Quite often, people don't come with a goal. They come because there's something going on and they want to talk about something. There's something that's not sitting right with them. So they come wanting to have a conversation about it, which is what we do. So the goal quite often isn't there at all at the beginning. So in some ways, ARGO would be a better acronym, but it doesn't spell out a word. So that's why it doesn't use
Very inconvenient.
Yes, very inconvenient. So I find that in using it quite often, students learning to use the GROW model go, well, actually conversations don't happen like that. And what do we do when they don't happen? And the only answer we've had is we'll just swap the letters around. It'll be fine. So that's why I set about trying to create a new model. And I have sat for many hours trying to create something that I could fit into a neat acronym and have it spell out something. And I finally come up with something. So that's how I've come to create my new model.
Excellent. So it doesn't have to be about a goal, but it could just be helping someone find their thinking around a topic. Yeah.
So we both coach a lot, and we tend not to do transactional coaching. So it's not just, okay, I need to present to someone next week. How do I go about planning for that? We don't tend to do that sort of coaching. It's possible that might come into the coaching room, but that's not where we tend to start. So this model lends itself to all different types of coaching that might come to us.
You said we don't start with the goal. How do we start?
We start with a T for time and a T for topic.
Okay.
So 2 T's, but we'll just start with T. So obviously we will have so much time, a certain amount of time with our coaching client, and we will let them know, part of our contract, we have an hour today. Just spell it out for them so they understand. Then we're not in danger of overrunning at the end of it. They're not going to think, oh, I've got an hour and a half. I actually had that a little while ago. I have someone that I've coached before, and he had arranged a meeting with me. And we sat there and he said, well, at the end of this 2 hours. And I thought, hang on, we don't do 2 hours, we do an hour and a half. So I said, okay, well, we've got an hour and a half today. So just spelling out what the time frame is that we're working with. And that gives them some idea of how much they can bring to the coaching within that time frame. So T is for time, and T is also for the topic that they would like to discuss. So everyone comes to coaching with something that's on their mind, something that they want to talk about. So we've just got that out there. So what would you like to give some thought to today is the other part of T.
So that sounds like a good place to start. What comes next?
So next we have the outcome for the coaching session. Now, they might come with some life-changing, well, I just want to throw everything up in the air and I want to change my life completely, which is probably not going to fit into an hour. We probably need a little bit more time than that. So we probably need to see them a few times to sort all of that out. But we can make a start. So I think asking the coachee, okay, what would you like to take away from this conversation is a good place to start. What would you like to have by the end of this conversation? What would be a good outcome for this conversation? What are those questions? Just one simple question, but what would you like to have by the end of this session?
So it's the outcome for today's session based on the topic and the amount of time that we've...
Yeah. Because they might not have an idea of what they want from the coaching completely. They might bring something fresh that's just happened that morning. So just something's just been sprung upon them and they go, oh, I really want to give this some thought. I don't know where I'm going with it yet, but this is on my mind and I want to.
Yeah.
I think sometimes if we have a coaching program that we've set up and we've done our chemistry session, they might have completed a coaching questionnaire. So they might come with something that they particularly want to discuss. But I know that quite often my coaches will have the chemistry session. They'll say, this is what I want to discuss. And then they come into the first session and they go, actually, I'd like to talk about this today because they've been giving it some thought.
Yeah. Or something's changed, something new's happened.
Or maybe just by having the chemistry session, they've gone away and they've done some more thinking and things have changed for them.
Yes, which can often happen. Yeah. So we have a T and an O.
Yeah.
What's next?
Next, we have an M for meaning. And this is just a bit of sense checking in some cases about whether this is really what they want to bring to coaching. Is this an important topic to bring to coaching? So my question is, what about this makes it important for you to bring to coaching today? Now, it may be that they're talking about some life-changing event, and it's clearly very important. So I wouldn't be asking that question in that circumstance. I will change it for a different meaning question. And I might say, okay, you have an outcome, a desired outcome for this session. If you have managed to achieve that desired outcome by the end of this session, what would that give you? What would that mean to you? So one of those questions, what would it give you? What would it mean to you? Just allows us to have a sense of how important it is for them and gets them to think about it. Because quite often people will bring things and they'll say, well, I want this. And unless you check with them why that might be important to them, it might not at all.
There might be something more important that they could spend that time on.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. We have to be careful that we're not judging. We're in a non-judgmental space, so it's not for us to decide what's important for the coachee. But I think just some sense checking is good at that point. I did have one quite experienced coach that came to a co-coaching session I was running and really quizzed the coachee about why they were bringing something to the session. And it kind of said, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is not important at all and 10 is it's very important, where are you? And he said, well, about 4. And she said, well, so why have you brought it to coaching then? Maybe you're just happy anyway. And he said, well, I didn't say I wasn't happy. I said, well, but maybe it's not really a problem. And he said, I didn't say it was a problem. So I think, it got a bit edgy. So we don't want to go to that space of judging whether it's important or not. It's for them to decide whether it's important, not for us. But I think just checking in with them that it is something that they really want to talk about is a good practice.
Yeah, and something that I find is that oftentimes a coachee will bring something when they first start working with you that may be slightly less important than something else in their life, but they're almost testing the relationship, testing the rapport, testing the results perhaps. And when they then get to know that they can trust you, that you're going to be non-judgmental and you're going to create that safe space, later they'll bring the more important
stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they might be having coaching for the first time So just want to test coaching out as a
Yes.
proposition. Is this something that actually works?
Yeah. Let's try it on something small before we move to
Yeah.
the big stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, now I can't help notice, Tom, that this spells out Tom so
It
far.
does indeed. Yeah.
Doesn't it?
It's just coincidental.
Okay. So, what comes after Tom?
It's an S. So it becomes Tom's.
Okay.
Who knows where it's going to go next? So S is for situation. So this is what's going on at the moment that makes this an issue. What are your current thoughts about the situation? So all of those good questions about the reality of what's happening for them at the moment. So we're exploring that situation, and this is the space where we might enter that person-centered zone of allowing them just to talk freely. And it might take the whole of the session for them to explain what's going on and how they're feeling about it, and what it means to them to be in the situation that they're in. So I don't feel as if I have to shut that conversation down. I'm happy for them to do their exploring at that point, and I'm not going to interrupt them. This is their space, and I'm just going to sit and listen and ask questions. I'm not going to dig too deep into the detail. I don't need to know the detail, but I want to understand their world and get a sense of their world. So that's a really good space to allow that to happen. It's also a good place to explore their limiting beliefs, perhaps, or their assumptions about what's going on. So quite often I will have someone come into the coaching room who'll tell me about a situation that's going on that involves another person. And they'll say, well, they're doing this and it's really annoying, it's really frustrating. And you get a sense of it, but it might not be real. It might just be in their heads. They think it's real, but once they've explained it to you, sometimes just playing back what they've just said out loud allows them to see that, oh yeah, that's just in my head. They've never actually said that. I'm just imagining that's how they feel about it.
That's a story I've told myself.
That's a story, yeah. Yeah. So good to explore the situation. So we've got Tom's.
Okay. So we've got topic and time, we've got outcome, we've got meaning, we've got situation. What's next?
Next is C for change.
Oh.
Now, you and I both work in transformational coaching. We're looking for something that the coachee wants to work with that's going to bring about change. And this is what I find for most coachees, is that there is some change they want to see in their life. They might not have a specific goal, but there's some change that they want to see. They're not comfortable with the situation. They want to change something about themselves. They want to move forward with something. So it's very much about, in this space, exploring what that might be. So this is where I get to ask my question. What would you like to have happen? It sounds like I always have. I'm not formulaic. I don't always ask that question, but I do like to ask it. It's great when people are locked in a situation and they've told you their tale of woe about what's going on at the moment, just to ask that question to maybe unlock their thinking about it. And just ask that, well, what do I want to happen? Oh, no, I don't want this, but I haven't actually stopped to think about what I want. So it's a good challenge to them to go, okay, so we're coaching now, so what would you like to move towards? What's the change? What's the change you want to see? And obviously, there may be desired outcomes, so it might not be ambiguous. By this point, they might have given it some thought, and there may be a desired outcome that they want to work towards. And we might build on that. So we might be asking them, what does success look like? If you manage to effectively achieve your desired outcome, what would that look like? So back to a little bit of visioning, we might be using that. But yeah, definitely looking at what a successful outcome would be for the coachee.
Excellent. And once we've established that, what's our next step?
We're next on to the options. So O for options. And I kind of combine all of the possible questions around options into this one letter. So O for options. So we're looking at generating as many options as we can to start with. So a bit of brainstorming, a bit of divergence in terms of thinking. So let's just get as many options out there as we can. So let's imagine someone coming to a fork in the road and they can't decide whether to go left or right. Metaphorically in life, do I go left or right? Now, if you come to a fork in the road, those aren't your only options. You could stay where you are. You could go back the way you came. You could get on a plane and go up above the roads. You could dig a tunnel. There are all sorts of options that you have when you come to a fork in the road that aren't just.
You could sit and have a picnic.
You could sit and have a picnic. So this is the divergent bit. Let's get as many ideas out there as we can. And this is a time not to think about there being silly ideas. And sometimes we'll say, what's the craziest way? What's your craziest option here? Could be a way to unlock their thinking. So that's the first part of options. And then the second part is to converge. So bring them all in. And okay, let's explore each of them and let's see what are practical options for you and what are actually inspiring options for you. What's going to motivate you to move forward with that option? Because that's, coaching is all about how we move ourselves forward, whether that's in our thinking or in actions we're going to take. We want there to be some forward momentum. So that narrowing down the options gives us that chance to actually think about how we might move forward with those options.
Okay, so we've opened up our thinking and then we've looked at all of the options and worked out which one is for us. So what's next in your model?
So next we have D for direction, and this is where we're going to take one, maybe two, maybe three. There might be options that can run simultaneously. So there might be 2 or 3 options they want to take, but let's just pick one. So if they've decided on what their option is, we've narrowed it down to one, they've got the option, I'm going to do this. This is how I'm going to move forward. And what we're going to then explore is, so how are you going to do that? What's the first step you're going to take that allows you to move forward? So that might be using a solution-focused approach. Okay, what's the first step you could take? And who will you talk to? Those sorts of questions. If you are going to do it, what deadline will you set for yourself? On a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is, no, I'm never going to do it in a million years, and 10 is, no, I'm definitely going. As soon as we finish this coaching session, I'm off and I'm going to start doing it. Where are you on that scale? It allows us to explore that. And obviously, if someone is only a 3 or 4, we might have some more work to do in terms of, is this the right option? What is it that's getting in the way of that? What emotional or psychological barriers might be preventing you from moving forward on it? So that could be really rich coaching territory when we get to that point in the conversation. So we might be circling back round again to explore those options in a bit more detail.
And I suppose if someone's got 2 or 3 options at the end of the options section, it might be that they need to go away and do some research on each one. I need to find this out about one, this out about another. I need to speak to so-and-so. And then they're going to, so there's going to be some direction, and then we're going to come back and explore them a little bit more. So kind of that toing and froing there.
Yes, so that might well be the next step, is to go away and do some more exploration. So do a bit of research, some due diligence on what it would mean. Because there may be consequences to taking those actions as well. If you've got a number of options, okay, if I decide that, what does that mean for the people around me? What does it mean for me, but also for the people around me? How are they going to respond if I do that? So there might well be some more exploration to do. So it might be action isn't what's necessary as the next step. It could just be some more thinking and maybe some more research.
So we've got the time and topic, we've got the outcome, the meaning, we've got the situation, the change, the options and the directions. So we've got Tom's cod.
We have Tom's cod. Wouldn't it be lovely if that was it? If we could just leave it there, it's Tom's cod.
Yeah, maybe not. I'm hoping there's another step.
There is. There's an E going on to the end, which makes it Tom's code.
Perfect. What's the E?
It's E for explore, which is all about exploring the coaching session, exploring the thinking that has just gone on. Now, my definition of coaching is a conversation that generates new thinking on the part of the coachee. So I want them to have done some new thinking within that coaching session. So I'm then interested for them to reflect and to think about what they have thought about in the session. So I might say to them, what do you know now that you didn't know at the beginning of this session?
That's a lovely question.
It is a lovely question. And it does create some pause in the conversation for them to sit and think and go, oh, okay, yeah. So just that bit of reflection. And it's good for me to have that space to reflect as well. And I might offer my perspective on where they've come in that coaching conversation.
Also, you mentioned all the way back at the S, the situation, that actually, if there's a lot of thinking to do around the situation, that might take the whole of a session, and you might need to come back to the rest of the model on the next session. So I'm thinking that you could actually ask that exploratory question at the end of the first session to see what they've discovered just in talking about their current situation.
Yeah, it can be really interesting. We don't have to go through the whole model in one coaching session. We might not go through the whole model at all, but I think it's a useful framework for us to have I think some people are a bit skeptical about having models, but I think it's useful to know where you are in the conversation, particularly when you're learning to coach, just to have something, some way of flowing through a conversation. And I think Tom's code offers that framework. And yes, definitely the end, if we've got to exploring the reality, just to ask that question at the end, what do you know now that you didn't know at the beginning of our conversation? Or maybe, how are you feeling now, having had that conversation? So just something to get them to reflect. And I think that's good practice in coaching anyway, to let the coachee know this is a thinking space and I'm going to be asking you what you're thinking. So let's get used to that because it's not going to come from me. The ideas aren't going to come from me. It's you doing the thinking. So I think good practice to get them interested in their own thinking.
So Tom's code certainly feels more nuanced than Grow. There seems to be more flow to it, and that we can go a bit deeper, perhaps.
Yeah, and well, the reason that I've come up with it is because I recognise the limitations of Grow, and I wanted a model that seemed to flow as a conversation would flow. And our students use this on the coaching diploma, and you can see it happening. I regularly observe them coaching, and that coming to a session and saying, okay, we've got on that. They tend to have 20 minutes. So we've got 20 minutes today. What would you like to talk about? And then on to, okay, what would you like to have by the end of this session? And what makes it important for this? And what's going on at the moment? So we're already into that, exploring the reality. And then obviously from that, it's okay, so what would you like to have happen? Again, lovely flow to that. And okay, what options do you have to make that happen? Okay, and if you took one of those options, how are you going to move that forward? What's the direction you're going to go in? And then, okay, what do you know now that you didn't know at the beginning? It has a really nice flow to it. So I'm really pleased. It is working. Everyone's embracing it. So I'm happy with that.
I was going to say, what's the feedback been like from your students?
It's been good. Excellent. And I'd say sometimes people will say, well, what do I do when I get to meaning? Because it's clearly very important. I don't want to ask them, why is this important? Because they're talking about something really serious. So actually if you manage to have the outcome that you wanted by the end of this session, what would that mean to you? Or what would that give you? So I think there were two ways to go with the meaning.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit more nuance to it there, isn't there? So.
And you've said that it might not all go into one session, and you might spread this out over perhaps 2 or maybe more sessions. But I have even seen you do this and use this code from start to finish in a 20-minute coaching session. So it's quite possible for it to be quite quick.
And obviously, if I'm demonstrating it within a workshop, we're not going to be there for an hour. I'm not going to explore it in the depth that I might. So I remember the session that you were witnessing and that demonstration, and I know that I wasn't digging as deep in the situation and the change element of it. Wasn't digging as deep as I might have, because some things were coming up that we could have explored. But you've got that opportunity as a coach to decide where it goes.
Yeah. Excellent. Now, we've got a couple of things that are going to be available to our listeners. We're going to have within the show notes a PDF, which they can download, which has got the code and some example questions. And we're also going to put a link to a video of an example of you using this in a coaching session.
We are indeed, which puts a little bit of pressure on me because we haven't actually recorded that video yet. But by the time that you listen to this podcast, there will be a video available.
Thank you. So hopefully you'll find those useful. I know I've tried this model and I found it extremely useful as well. And I know how long you've worked to get a model that you think kind of covers all bases and does have that element of nuance to it and flows really nicely, and also covers sort of almost every eventuality in the coaching room, whether it's a goal focused or a thinking space. So I know how much you've put into this. So I'm glad you've got to the end.
Yeah, it did take a lot of time and effort and a lot of failed attempts to come up with something. So I'm pleased to have got there in the end. And I tested it out, and I'm happy. Done my road testing on it, and I'm happy that it's something that works.
Thank you, Tom, for sharing your code with us.
You're very welcome, Helen. So next time on our podcast, we will be doing another exploration of topics that coachees might bring to the coaching room. and Helen will be exploring the topic of imposter syndrome and what that might mean to our coachees. So we look forward to seeing you next time.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.